Is everybody in? Is everybody in? The show is about to begin.
Welcome to the podcast, concerts that made us, interviews and stories, tales from the bus. We love taking you back to when it all went down. The greatest live shows and the cheering crowd sound. It's concerts that made us, concerts.com.
On this episode, I'm chatting with Todd McCarty. When it comes to the music industry, Todd has really done it all, from being a performer all the way up to being a vice president at Sony Music. This is a hugely interesting conversation. Now, there is a segment where Todd speaks about the peaceful quality of life living in Japan. I have to let you know this episode was recorded before the tragic assassination of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, which was an incredibly rare and unusual occurrence in Japan. We also talk about Band Builder Academy, which Todd created to help musicians navigate the music industry. And in my opinion, it's something that every musician needs to have at their disposal. So, without further ado, let's get on with the show. Todd McCarty, it's absolutely fantastic to have you here at Concerts That Made Us.
Hey, Brian. Nice to meet you, man. I've been looking forward to this. Pumped up. Let's do it.
It's great to meet you too. Great to meet you. Now, we might as well jump straight into it. You've been a drummer, a taxi driver, a tour manager, promoter, record label general manager, and you were a vice president at Sony Music. First of all, why ain't I sitting in front of some 70-year-old dude who's retired now? You know, you're pretty young to have achieved so much.
Yeah, no, it's funny. It's the people that got in my taxi cab when I was 22 or 23 said the same thing. They're like, "Aren't you a little young to be a taxi cab driver?" And I was just fresh out of school. And I guess I don't know. I started music early. I was already playing in punk rock bands and booking shows and a little bit of tours in high school, and I think even as young as 15. So I got into it very young, and I was a record label general manager probably at age 26, and doing some meetings with 70-year-old guys in suits, and I was 26, and they were looking at me like, what the hell am I sitting across the table from a kid, but yeah. So I've always been young in the business.
You've definitely had a wild life so far anyway, but we'll start at the very beginning. Is there a seminal point in your early life that you can point to and say, that's what made me want to work in the music business?
Ooh, yeah. So I guess, yeah, at first it wasn't music business. I wanted to be a drummer. I was a musician first. So it was like parades, going to parades and hearing the drum lines and how powerful it was. It hit you in the chest. So I fell in love with music from that, and just had musical family, like lots of big brothers and sisters. I'm a youngest of 5. So lots of music in the house. I was, raised in the 80s. I'm 46 years old. But I think the business part happened when, there was this band in Washington, D.C., my hometown, Washington, D.C. There's this band called Fugazi. And before that, they were in a band called Minor Threat. And they had a record label called Discord Records, still have a record label. And they were in my hometown signing artists and putting out vinyl records and CDs and stuff in the 80s, and doing it all themselves with no major distribution or anything, just hand to hand at shows. They'd get them in the record stores. And I was like, oh, you don't need to be on Sony or Warner or Universal or BMG to be a rock star, and they were packing rooms of 2,000, 3,000 people in big venues and selling hundreds of thousands of albums from their little, warehouse records, how it was actually a house in Washington, D.C. where the label was. So that made me want to do what they did. So I think Discord Records was the first moment I was like, I want to do the music business. And I was probably 12, 13 at the time.
Jeez, so they were actually doing what most bands are doing nowadays, but back in the 80s.
That's
That's
right.
crazy to think of.
Right.
Yeah, they were. If only other bands knew that that was the way it was going to go.
Yeah. And I pressed my first vinyl record my sophomore year of high school. So I don't know, I was probably 15, 16 years old. And I was working at a print shop actually, and we printed the jackets and just sent off for the vinyl records. But yeah, so I started young too, and that dream was right there. I didn't wait for anybody to sort of come to me. It was like, well, these guys did the music business right out of their house and did it really big and well. Probably have sold a few million records from their little label. And if they could do it, then us kids could do it too. So that's what we did.
Yeah, and what steps did you take then to becoming a drummer, forming your own band?
Yeah, that was just probably like finding the dude in elementary school or middle school that looked like the kid that might play guitar, and happened to be this kid, Richard Work. Never forget him. He had long hair. He was the only kid in elementary school with long hair. He was a skateboarder, and he played guitar. I asked, he played guitar. So we started, and we're doing like Metallica covers and just like AC/DC covers, the easy stuff. And that was it. Like we just did those covers in my basement. And I think that was, we had a name. It was Anathema, which has now become a big metal band. But we were the first in 1982 or something. But yeah, and then it was just putting together garage bands. That's what it was. And but first booking shows in sophomore year of high school was probably when I started booking shows and calling radio stations and writing, getting the newspapers and local magazines to do write-ups on our shows and concert previews, and really learning the music business at a very young age.
Very DIY as well, it seems. Like most people would study in college for a couple of years to learn all that, but you as a teenager just took to it like a fish in water. You just start doing it yourself.
It was very DIY. And what's funny about that is from 15 to 22, I didn't learn much more. It was all like basic DIY promotion. And we were booking concerts ourselves and all this stuff. And we did it all ourselves and didn't really ever question how the majors or bigger labels did it. We were just like, well, this works. Why do it differently? But it wasn't until probably 3 years into my label career at Fearless Records when we had a platinum record go number one, like a number one radio song in like 12, 13 countries by Plain White T's. The song was Hey There, Delilah. And to that point, our biggest hit was At the Drive-In, awesome rock band on the label. But that was like maybe 300,000, 400,000 records. I'm talking like number one in 14 countries with Plain White T's or something. So I had to learn the major label, big boy record business when that happened. And I was still running on DIY fumes up until that.
That must have been a really scary time. Something great is happening, but also you're being launched onto another level that you haven't done before. Yes.
No, I had to take a call from the then CEO of Warner Music to, deal with an issue with our song, a global issue that was really critical to it. And and I was 26, 27 and very green, talking to one of the most powerful guys in the business over something. So I'll never forget that.
Jeez. And back in them days, was it always in your mind, that you were going to become as powerful as him, or you were going to go that far in the music industry? Did you have a clear, concise plan laid out for yourself?
No, I didn't. I didn't have a clear, concise plan. And I didn't make it as far as the CEO of Warner. But, I made it to the senior vice president label at Sony Music. And I was the GM of the record label Fearless Records that I worked the longest for 13 years, and calling the shots. And that was that was to me the highest because, I was running a record label and we had platinum selling artists on it and we were competing with the majors in some terms. So that was good, but I didn't have a plan. It was a little bit of luck, a lot of hard work and elbow grease and getting in the trenches and fighting for our artists. And that was it. It was always like, who are the artists on the label that need our attention right at this moment, so we could kind of seize the moment, seize that momentum and that energy. And it was always just like head down looking at that. There wasn't a lot of planning. Towards the end of my term at Fearless, we had sold the company to new owners, and I gave that a shot, but I was looking to do something different. And that was when I was like, I've been doing the DIY and independent record label thing for 15, 16 years now. I wonder what it's like to work at a major. I was always curious. So luckily I didn't seek them out. Actually, it just happened that somebody from Sony recruited me at that time when I was thinking about that. And I took the call, and I'm glad I took the call, and it was a good experience working for Sony. And they offered me a senior vice president role. It was awesome. And I worked for their rock group, which was Century Media, which was the metal label, Inside Out, which was the prog progressive rock label. And I looked after their newer alternative label too, that did like Lovely the Band and the Unlikely Candidates and some really cool Iron Tom, some really cool rock alternative bands. Lovely the Band's another one, ended up, multi-platinum, probably 10, 15 countries, #1 as well.
I'd probably be killed now if I didn't ask, but working behind the scenes in the music industry for labels, is it as cool and as fun as outside people would think it is?
Definitely. It is. It's a lot of fun. It's
really,
it's, sometimes it's awful, like any job, like there's bad days, but it's mostly fun. And, dealing with music all day, I couldn't think of doing anything else. I still deal with music. I probably listen to more music now than I did when I was at a label, but lots of shows, 4 shows a week, 3 shows a week. You're just living and breathing. It was a good time.
Yeah. I was just going to ask, I imagine it would be a lot of concerts, and I imagine it's a scenario where you can go to any concert you want. Even if you heard about it today, it's on tonight, you could make a phone call and you're there. That sounds like, for me anyway, that would be the dream job. Just any concert you can go to,
Yeah, it is kind of like that. I mean, the tickets aren't free, so, you should offer to pay, but usually they'll just comp you and stuff. But we do the same for anybody else that called. There was a lot of trades going on.
I imagine you'd actually, you'd probably take the title for the podcast of being to the most concerts. Then you've probably been to thousands, have you?
I don't know about 2,000, but definitely, I think I was trying to count it when you were like the concerts that made us. And I mean, first of all, you got to understand, I was a musician, probably played 250, 300 shows as an artist, and then as a drummer. And then I was a tour manager and for 2.5 years, and probably did 300 shows in that time. So that's 600, 700. And then, just the shows that I went to. And when I booked a venue in Orlando, Florida for a while, a coffee house, and, we're booking shows. I mean, between the shows I booked, played at, and went to, it was sometimes like 4 or 5 nights a week I was in a club. So, I think there's probably, like, from age 15 to 23, there must have been 1,000 concerts there. And then, as a tour, and then after that, it was just going to concerts maybe 2 times a week, but every week for 15 years or something, so yeah, probably 1,500, maybe 2,000 shows. I don't know. I lost count.
Oh man. I have a very tough question for you. So which ones stand out? Do any of them stand out?
Yeah. Now the ones that I was actually at, because the biggest concert for me, like life-changing, if I had, if it was one concert, it was the Live Aid concert when I was like 8 or 9 on TV. mean, that just hit me. I mean, I think it hit everybody, but you know, on that show, it was like Queen, The Who, David Bowie, Phil Collins, U2, Black Sabbath. There was the whole, We Are the World thing. It was just huge. But I wasn't at that show. So if it was the one I was at, my favorite show was this artist I mentioned earlier, Fugazi, from my hometown. But I was outside of Washington, D.C. I lived in Orlando, Florida for 10 years. And when I was in high school, probably 16, 17, I had this crazy idea. I wanted to see Fugazi play because when I was in DC living there in middle school, I actually didn't get to see them. But when I was in high school, I was in Orlando. So I bought a ticket, found out about a concert. They were going to do it outside underneath the Washington Monument, the like needle looking monument in DC.
Yeah.
And they had a stage there. And I was like, I am not going to miss that. So I bought a plane ticket, just myself, went up there, flew up there, got off the plane at the airport, somehow figured out how to get over to the mall where the monument was. There was no security at the concert. Like it was just the stage. I walked right up on the stage. So I was like side stage and I'm seeing like all the crew and the band. This is one of my favorite bands. And I didn't know them or anything, but I was right there in it. And then they filmed the concert and like I'm on the side of the stage and there's photos from that show. There's photos from that it's a famous Fugazi show. And that was awesome. It was just my favorite show.
I'd imagine.
I did a fly out maybe like my senior year in high school. So probably 17. Another thing, there was this band Sunny Day Real Estate that I loved, but they were from Seattle and I was in Orlando, Florida. So it's like 3,000 miles. So I did the same thing. I jumped on the plane, went out to see them. I didn't know Seattle. I just got in a taxi cab from the airport, say, take me to downtown. And then I bought a ticket, saw Sunny Day Real Estate, and Joan Jett played the same night. So that was kind of cool, but I didn't know any of the other artists on the festival. It was basically just 3,000 miles and a plane ticket just to go see that one band. So that was really memorable.
Yeah, I've often wondered about people who go to concerts on their own. I've often like toyed with the idea of doing myself. Would I enjoy it? But I don't know, like I'm 34 and I feel like I'd have a bit of fear about it. You were 17 and hopping on a plane flying cross country on your own and going to a gig. You must have been a pretty ballsy teenager.
I guess so. I don't know where that came from. I mean, yeah, don't know. I just had to do it. I wasn't gonna miss it. I think it comes from when I was like 7 or 8. We were at the beach. The whole family was at the beach, and I had 4 older siblings, and every one of them got Police was in town. The Police on their Synchronicity tour.
Yeah,
and I really loved Stuart Copeland's drumming. I loved the Police. I wanted to be there, but I was too young, and my mom wouldn't let me go. No, there's going to be marijuana there, like. So granted, I probably wouldn't have let my kid. Maybe I would, but I didn't get to go. So I was really hurt from that. And I guess that's why my mom couldn't like say, no, you're not going to, 1,000 miles away or whatever. So she felt guilty about not letting me go to the Police concert.
Yeah.
And so I got my way on that one.
Yeah. And you mentioned you worked as a tour manager. Is it different going, well, you're not going to concerts, you're working at concerts, but how different is it at that side of the concert from, just attending a concert as a concert goer?
So different. Yeah. It's like the difference of like going to work and then going to going to an amusement park. It would, that's the difference. Although, I mean, going to a job that you love versus going to an amusement park, because I loved the work. But it was work. I mean, you saw the back of the venue, meaning like the dumpster, the loading dock, the brick wall, and the smelly, alley. You saw the back of the venue more than you saw the box office, the front of the venue, the inside of the venue. I mean, you're literally in a dark, dank, smelly environment most of the time when you're touring. So it's definitely not like that. And most of my touring was club touring, not festival shows, although I did some of those too. But No, it's a lot of driving, a lot of calling, calling hotels ahead of time, calling the promoters, the production managers, and settling, business with them beforehand. If anything isn't ready or there's something goes wrong the day of the show, you got to be scrambling to get it. You're driving members to the guitar store, drum store to get gear that broke. I don't know, a lot of things happen while you're on the road, so you're just dealing with that. So it's a lot of it's a 24/7 job, little bit of sleep, not much. I In those tours, a lot of times I was the driver. Other members of the band would drive too, but yeah, so it was different. And then going to a concert is a lot of waiting around and sitting around and either being hot or too hot and like sweaty in the venue, or just a lot of boredom, I
Yeah.
think, just a lot of waiting around. And it's not like that when you're on the other side of it. It's hustle bustle the whole time.
Well, go, go, go.
Yeah.
Did you
Speak for the tour manager.
yeah, yeah. You must have some crazy stories from that time though. Did you ever have to deal with any divas or any big egos or anything like that?
Yeah. No divas. Although, I got to see some, there was a diva. I was out with an artist called Stereolab from Europe. They're some from UK, some from Germany. I think they have French members as, yeah, French, the singer. Yes. But yeah, there's some divas on both the female side and the male side of that group. That was a really interesting tour. Yeah. And also that was around the time of 9/11. So it
Right.
was a really interesting time. And I was not the tour manager for Stereolab. I was the tour manager for the support act called Fugu, who was also a multinational group. Half the members from England, half the members from France. I think they had a German in the band. Um, but so imagine, like, this is like a week or two after 9/11. They somehow got it. Yeah, it was maybe a week or two after, but we're traveling around in the middle of America in Iowa, cornfields, just nothing.
Right.
And we got pulled over, and the police were like, okay, what the hell's going on? Like, why is your driver French? He doesn't speak English. He's showing me a passport. Like, do you have a German, French? Like, he asked to see all of our IDs, and you're the only American. Like, what's going on here? So he thought he had like a international terrorism thing on his hands. So we got detained, and luckily we worked away from it. But the same thing happened at the Canadian border.
Right.
So then we had to go into Vancouver, into Canada from Seattle, and the same thing happened. So we got stopped at the border. So that was kind of interesting times.
Jeez. I suppose for the time it was, you can see their logic though. A lot of different nationalities, it would seem a bit unusual when senses are heightened and security is so risky at that time.
Yep. No, it definitely was. We didn't argue. It was pretty interesting. But
And I feel like I'm flip-flopping through time now, but back to your days of being a drummer, did your band get much success?
not commercial success, but we didn't lose money. I mean, we made a little bit of money, but it was enough to like really enjoy what we were doing. We toured, like we would book tours from Florida all the way to Chicago, just a good 1,200, 1,300 miles. Like a 2-3 week tour. We'd go up to the East Coast, maybe 12-date tour up to, Boston, New York, down the East Coast. And, we did get some songs in like local radio. We sold a few thousand CDs at the time, which was decent, made a little bit of dough from the CDs. But no real commercial success. And we were just sort of written up in kind of like punk and rock zines and magazines and some, early forms of blogs, but nothing. There was no chart success or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah. And was it a natural progression, or did you have to make a tough decision then to leave that behind and go behind the scenes in the music industry?
I did it simultaneously for a while. So while I was playing in bands, I was a tour manager for, and playing in my own band, but being on the road 6 to 8 months of the year was pretty hard to be in a band, but was still able to get the job done. But no real success with those artists either. And then in 2002, I moved from Washington, D.C. Well, before that, I lived in Florida. 2000, came up to D.C. 2002, I was in a band in D.C. at the time, but then I got a job in California at Fearless, took that job, and actually the other two guys in the band in DC moved with me. We all three moved out, took our band out to California and did the band there, and tried, for a while, but probably 2 years into that Fearless job, I had to kind of stop doing the band because I was just full-time Fearless and I couldn't tour, couldn't do anything about the music career anymore. So sort of put it away. I still kind of, dabbled in it a little bit after that, but with no intention of touring or releasing records.
Just for fun, just for yourself more so.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people would be asking themselves, you were the GM of a record label. You had your own band. Could you not be like, here, we'll make my band a success?
Oh, right. Yeah, interesting. That's a good question. Because probably could have, but we weren't good enough.
Right.
Frankly. I mean, if I had to be my own A&R guy, we didn't have the songs. We didn't have the sort of proof of concept. We didn't have the fan base. Like we weren't getting it done. So I guess that's also says a little bit about my artist development skills. I couldn't develop my own bands, but truthfully, I learned a lot of that artist development stuff a little bit later on. Like I said, I was sort of going on DIY fumes until we had that big hit, and really had to sharpen our music marketing record label skills probably around 2006, 2007, when Plain White Tees were breaking and taking off.
Yeah. And did the book stop with you when it came to bands? If you liked the band, could you make or break them, on your label, so to speak?
As far as signing them or developing and promoting them? Developing,
promoting.
Yeah, developing and promoting. I mean, for a while, yeah, that was what I led the staff. The owner of the company and founder of the company at Fearless Records, Bob Becker, for the most part, he signed like 80%, 90% of the artists on the label. So he was the talent scout. He was he had some other people there too that were doing some signings as well over the years. But for the most part, he signed most of the artists. And then once he handed them off, it was my job. And then, of course, we had a team. I can't take credit for all of the artist development because we had, head of marketing, we had product managers, everybody contributed. Like our graphic designer would contribute to ideas. We had publicists, we had, interns, everything. Everybody lent a hand, and we expected you to be a marketing expert in the record business, no matter what your title was and what your job was. Everybody had to lend a hand and do everything they could.
Yeah.
But yeah, those decisions did lie with me.
Maybe this never happened now, but did you ever come across a band that you had on the label, you were certain they were going to be the next best thing, but nothing seemed to work?
Oh, another good question. Yeah, that actually happens a lot, like over my time at Fearless between 2002 and there was already 30 bands on the label when I got there. But between 2002 and 2016, there was probably 70, 80 bands signed. And a good 50 of them we really thought should have been huge, so there was a lot of that. But for every At the Drive-In, Pierce the Veil, Mayday Parade, or, Sugar Cult or big successful band, there was probably 7 or 8 that just couldn't do it. But one in particular, there is a band called Somerset they're still together. They just recently reunited. They're a pop band, but they have some pop punk roots. But man, they had such good songs, and we had them going up the charts at pop radio, and we got them on the big iHeartRadio festival in Las Vegas. They did the New Year's ball dropping on in New York City and Manhattan, the Big Red Apple dropping. They did all these big things, and it seemed like it was just going to go, but it just didn't happen. There wasn't the magic. There wasn't that luck or that magic factor, that it just didn't go. And I really wish it did. And I hope that, it could still happen. They're still together. So I hope it happens for them. They're a great group of people. And the whole team felt that way. That's another thing I'll say about that project, is one of the few projects where everybody was working in lockstep, from the radio guy, the marketing team, the band, the tour manager, the artist manager, the booking agent. Everybody was just really on good footing and working well together, and it just didn't work.
It's crazy how it can go that way, though. But how much rope would you give the band, before you have to say it's not working? Would you then, unsign them from the label, or what's the process?
No, a lot of rope, because from an independent record label point of view, we don't, do the major, huge advances like the major labels, where they'll drop $1 million advance or something, or make a ridiculous amount of, spend a lot of money on the marketing or photo shoot or music video or something. So we weren't laying out as much capital. So we had a lot more tolerance to be patient. And also, we're working with young artists, developing artists, and it takes a good 5 years to develop a band. You might hear about these quick lightning in a bottle experiences, but everybody who works in the business will tell you those are few and far between. It doesn't happen that way. It's 5, 6, 8, 10 years before artists get their break. I'll give you a couple examples. At Fearless Records, we signed the artist Portugal the Man in probably 2002, 2003. They didn't really break and have big number one songs until 4 years ago, maybe. So, it took them 10, 12 years to really break, Plain White T's, same thing. They were around for 6 or 7 years. There's just, most of the examples are like that. It takes good time. So they got a lot of rope. We didn't cut a lot of bands. We had short deals, to where those were artist friendly deals, to where once they finished their record label, they were free agents to go somewhere else. An example of that would be Motionless in White, where they had a 3-album deal. As soon as the third record was finished, they had the choice to either re-sign with us, made a fair offer, or they could go, be free agents. And they did. They chose to go to Roadrunner Records, and they had a very happy career there. And so that's what I loved about the independent labels, is it was very patient, artist friendly, and we win together, we lose together.
And then when you went to Sony, I imagine it was much more cutthroat and almost probably a different world, was it?
Very different, but in a lot of ways the same too, because the obvious differences were the bureaucracy, going from company of 25 people to 2,500 people. It's just, way big, huge difference. The big difference is the red tape and sort of being constrained by corporate rules and policies. And, at the indies, it was more shoot first, ask questions later. At the majors, it was all clear. It really slowed business down, in my opinion. And it's a disadvantage at the labels. But I think aside from that, it's mostly a people thing. Who's the team? How well does the team gel together? And I found no difference in the staff and the people at a major label versus an indie label. They're just music lovers like us, and they're just as passionate. They have just as much good ideas, and sometimes even more higher level ideas. They're not as scrappy as coming from the independent labels. They have more budget to work with, so money is more of a solution. Whereas at the independent label, you're scrappy and you're working with low budgets, and you know how to promote for free. Another thing somebody told me once is independent labels are really getting good at getting an artist from like 1 to 20 in their career. And then the major labels are good at going from 20 to 100, and that's not to say that independent labels can't do it, either all themselves, because we got many artists to 100. And, Adele, who is rightly one of the top selling artists of the century, she was on an independent label and before she was on RCA. And they got the most album sales of any artist in a decade or something, maybe a couple decades on an indie. So indies can go the whole way too. But yeah, I think there's good people at both. And there can be some bad people at both types of labels too. So I just really think it comes down to the people and the way they work together. And stability, I'll say that's something I didn't like about major labels.
Really?
No stability. Independent labels, most of the staff you'll find at them have worked there for many, many, many years. There's low turnover. Major labels, there's these big shakeups. New top level CEOs come in and they just clean house and they get rid of people. Don't like that. That was not good. I mean, I was out of there before that could happen to me. I was only at Sony for a year and a half. And I moved to Japan. So I got out. But interestingly, what was really cool about my Sony experience is even after I had quit, they still needed some help. So when I was in Japan, they were really cool about it. They let me work on a contract basis for them my first 6 months living here in Japan, which was really nice.
Not too bad. So, and another burning question I have for you, as someone who's worked for labels for, say, the last 20 years, and there's been a massive shift in the music industry and how music is made, were labels afraid of the whole of streaming? Well, not streaming, but afraid that so many people have access to make music themselves and put it out there? Did it scare the labels, even the indie labels?
I don't think so. I was never threatened or scared by it. Sort of just saw it as a good thing. I mean, I can say that, like, now a lot of people, you hear this, like, this thing in every generation thinks that their music when they grew up was the best. If you go back to the 60s, those people will swear their music was the best. 70s, oh man, rock and roll, like classic rock, like that was the best. Every generation swears by that. But what I can say is maybe the songwriting has not gotten better yet. Arguable, but the production quality and the sound quality of the recordings and the way to like get to good songwriting is so much easier. You can learn younger and get past all of those hurdles at a young age. Like, you can teach yourself music production pretty easily, or video production or photography or any skill. You can teach yourself so much younger now with all the resources that are out there. So you're not fumbling the first, 5-10 years of your career. You're not fumbling around trying to learn things so quickly. So the learning curve has gotten shorter. And I think that's helped the music business. And we get these demos from artists that are just fantastic. They're ready to go. You can, you don't have to like re-record it. It sounds so good. You can just take it right from their demo out of their bedroom and release it, So that's happened a lot. A lot of the music you guys are hearing these days has come right off of a bedroom recording.
That's really interesting.
I don't think they're threatened by it. I think it's just evolution. It's good.
Making their job easier. Probably why would they be threatened when it's it's cutting down the work for them?
Yeah, and I think it's public knowledge, and maybe people don't know, but the record labels are making more money than they did 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. The revenues keep going up. So they're not threatened. They're not feeling like the pinch is happening. They are cutting staff and their overhead is getting cut, but they don't need the manpower that they used to need. So the business model is doing just fine.
Yeah. And before we move on to what you're currently doing, I wanted to mention your series of punk goes pop. Or I absolutely love that. I'm a big fan of when a rock or a punk group takes a pop song and makes it that bit more edgier and everything, and there's loads of them, there's punk goes rock, punk goes pop, as I said. How much hands-on experience did you have making that a thing? Was it your creation?
No, it was the owner of the company, Bob Becker at Fearless. It was his creation. He did the first one in 2000. It was called Punk Goes Metal. And I don't think he ever really saw it as this big grand Punk Goes series in the beginning. He got like one band turned in a cover of like an Aussie cover or something like that. I don't quote me, but I want to say it was like the Aquabats, the ska band or whatever. They wanted to do like a metal cover, and I think they turned it in. And then he's like, I wonder if I can get some other bands to do it. And he did, and put that first one out, and it was really successful pretty quickly. And then he did the second volume, which was called Punk Goes Pop, which was the very first volume of Punk Goes Pop. And that one was, hugely successful. And now I think they're up to like Punk Goes Pop 8, maybe. And there's also like Punk Goes Classic Rock, Punk Goes 80s, Punk Goes 90s. There's Punk Goes Crunk, which is like Punk Goes Hip Hop. There's a couple volumes of Punk Goes Acoustic. So yeah, and it has some of the biggest punk bands doing all these covers. So I was involved from the marketing from very early, from the second series, Punk Goes Pop. That was the first record I worked at Fearless Records when I got there in 2002. And along with the first Play My Tees album, those two albums were the first I worked. And but yeah, so I was involved in a lot of them. And from the contract side, like getting the contracts done with the artists, to sort of like licensing and also just more of the marketing ideas and being in, we had big marketing meetings and grand ideas for all those things, but it was a big team effort. I would say there was, 10, 15, 20 people over the years that left their stamp on that series.
Yeah. When I came across it, was, do you guys have Now That's What I Call Music over in the States?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. It was like that, but a punk version. I absolutely loved it. It was just it's a great anthology of harder covers or punkier covers, I suppose. Yeah. But Japan, what is Japan like to live in? I've always wondered what that side of the world is like.
Yeah, it's just so everybody knows. I moved here in 2017 from Los Angeles. Quit my Sony job and moved over here to start my own business, which is Band Builder Academy. We'll probably get into a little bit, but I always wanted to live in Japan since I met this Japanese band. So I mentioned a band earlier called Fugazi, who's like my first favorite band. There was the Japanese version of Fugazi called Eastern Youth, and I fell in love with that band shortly after I discovered Fugazi, and was a big fan of theirs, and learned about Japanese music and culture from that band. I actually ended up being their tour manager in the States for like 3 of their US tours with At the Drive-In and Cursive, Murder City Devils, Jimmy Eat World. We did some dates with them. Oh. So I was their tour manager eventually. So I got to meet sort of like one of my favorite bands on the planet, and be in a tour van with them. And then I'd go to Japan and go to their shows over here. So that's kind of how I got to know Japan. I came to Japan between 2002 and 2017. I think I came to Japan almost every year. And for a while, like Red Bull, the energy drink, they were funding some of my trips, because I would do like this Battle of the Bands thing in Tokyo every year. And Red Bull put it on, and they would have me be a judge. So I got to like judge a lot of these Japanese up and coming bands. Mm. It was awesome. I was getting to come over here frequently, and just loved it, and was like always curious to live here. So when I had my grand idea to, get out of the label business and get into the music industry education, I now educate musicians, artist managers, and record labels on music marketing and promotion. When I had that whole idea, I was like, I can do it anywhere from a laptop and an internet connection. So I could do it in Japan, and I'm married to a Japanese, so the immigration wasn't a problem. We have a daughter. She's 10 now. And we moved her here when she was 5 we actually were going to stay 2 years to get her language abilities going. Yeah. But then the pandemic happened, and we just decided, we're going to stay. And that was like, well, we'll go back when the pandemic's over, but of course it's ongoing. And we've just decided we love it here. It's a great place to live. It's not as expensive as everybody thinks it is. In some ways, it's really cheap. things that are expensive are like, well, land and like real estate, but like fruit, but like fruit has to be imported. Anything that has to be imported is expensive.
Yeah.
But everything else pretty cheap over here. And the people are super friendly. There's no guns, and I'm an American, so like pretty afraid of guns right now, and it's very peaceful here. And yeah, I haven't been, threatened or anything like that. And living in Los Angeles, it was, you're always looking over your shoulder.
Yeah,
And,
I'd imagine.
yeah, so it's a nice, easy, relaxing, peaceful life here. I love it. The schools are good for my daughter, and it's kind of a dream. One of my things I can tick off, that I've done that I'm really glad I got to do.
Yeah, I always had this image that it was, super peaceful, super relaxing, and just a really mellow way of life. That I imagine it's probably wrong to say, but I imagine depression rates in Japan are very low because it seems like a place that would be easy to be happy in.
Yeah, I think it's like anywhere in the world. Like if you are determined to find peace and, zen out or whatever, you can find that. And, and then if you're just bent on climbing the society's ladder and chasing material things, and you can do that here in Japan too, and run yourself into a dead end. Like there is a high suicide rate here. There's something where people work themselves to death. Like there's a word for it.
Right.
There's all of that depression with younger people because there's so much pressure to get good grades and get into good schools and all this stuff and get good test scores. So there's lots of that. And I don't like that part of it. So it's like any society where it's got their two sides to it. But I'm one that's looking for, I'm looking for sort of a life balance, a good work-life balance and family and business and all of it. And also just some, peace. So I'm finding that, and I'm not living in Tokyo. I'm outside where it's much quieter, and there's mountains, rivers, there's beaches, everything. So it's nice here.
Oh, sounds beautiful. Sounds beautiful. And when it comes to music in Japan, I always hear, Western bands, they always tour like crazy in Japan. But what is the actual music scene in Japan like for Japanese bands?
It's a great question. I love to talk about it. Nobody ever asked me this, but it's always been a mystery to me when I was outside of Japan. And even like coming here and visiting and talking with Japanese artists, I thought I kind of understood it, but it was still a puzzle. But now that I've lived here for 5 years, I've really started to understand it. And unfortunately, the pandemic has kept concerts away. They're sort of coming back at a trickle here. But there's so many interesting things and it's very different than it is, elsewhere. And I think some of the big differences are like definitely the tickets are more expensive, like because space and real estate is an issue. So the venues in Tokyo have to charge $70 a ticket. That's like the going rate. 50 is cheap. But some of them are 100, 150. So artists make their money from touring, but it's not a very big country. It's it's probably not too much different than the UK where, your markets, you can't overplay, so they can't play. You can't in America, you could get away with playing 200 shows in a year just in America easily. In Japan, they can't. So they have to charge more that way too. But they make their money from the shows. They don't have big bills when they play club shows because they want to make all that money for themselves. So usually the show is great. Like you go early, like 7 p.m. and you're out of there by like 9:30 p.m. So you can go hit dinner after the show. So your night is like get off work, get ready, go to the show, enjoy the music, and you don't have to sit through opening bands. You just watch the band you're paying for. Now, there's usually one opener sometimes, but usually it's just a short show, 2 hours, 2.5 hours. You're out of there, and then you go spill out from the venue into like a nice restaurant. If you drink, go out for some drinks after the show. So it's a really fun night. And whereas most elsewhere, you're waiting around in line at 7 p.m., then you sit through 3 hours of opening acts, and then you get to the band you're there for, and then you're not out. You're out of there at like 1 o'clock, 12:30 at night when the Predators are out. You got to run to your car so you don't get mugged. So like that's my my LA concert experience versus Japanese. I love that experience. First of all, that's something people should know. And then there's this difference in music. Like people think Western bands are huge here. They're not.
Really?
Lady Gaga is popular here because she's in the news and in the media. She's on TV sometimes. Bruno Mars is popular here, but these days K-pop is on top. J-pop is up there with them, and then anime music. But those three genres are like 95% of what's popular. I mean, for the older generations, there's a traditional folk music called Enka or Anka. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but international rock music and international pop music is very low, fortunately. But when those artists do come over here, they're small, intimate shows, like 800 to 1,000 capacity venues. And the fans that are at those shows go wild for them. So that's the experience the Western artists get when they come here. It's a sold out venue, maybe 1-2 nights sold out. And it's awesome. They love it. The fans are taking pictures of them and chasing them. It's like Beatlemania. So that's why the foreign artists love coming over here and getting that crazy Japanese fan experience. And they do it. Even for small bands that are playing a 200 capacity room, they get that Beatlemania experience. So it's on all levels. And then some foreign artists come over here for the big Summer Sonic, Fuji Rock festivals, the big festivals. And they get a really nice experience too. And those are massive crowds. And that's where the small proportion of people that like foreign music in Japan, they go to those bigger festivals mostly.
Yeah.
Or the small club shows. But those festivals have had fewer and fewer international acts now, like Summer Sonic and Fuji Rock are mostly populated by Asian artists, mostly Japanese. But like Fuji Rock started as sort of like a lookalike to, Reading or Leeds or like Lollapalooza or something like that, or Coachella in America. Like they were sort of like those festivals, or in Australia, Big Day Out, those things.
Yeah.
But it's less of Fuji Rock now. And it's, if I had to describe it, like there's like a Caribbean vibe going on with the music. Like it's an island nation. It's islands. So they really like the Caribbean, Cuban, Afro-Cuban genre, the Polynesian, like Hawaiian, Polynesian music, that type of indie rock coming out. There's like bands from like Taiwan and stuff that are coming over that sound like that. And then a lot of that type of almost like jam band type stuff going on at Fuji Rock and Summer Sonic now, which is really interesting to me. That the Japanese ear likes, that doesn't like J-pop and K-pop and anime music. They tend to like that, I don't know, very soulful island style music is sort of like influencing, and it's less like, big European and American and Australian rock bands. It's like a lot more of that stuff, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it is actually. I've never actually heard of that before, that type of music. It's interesting.
I hadn't either. It's something I discovered here just when I moved here.
Yeah, I'll have to try search some out and give it a listen. A bit of an impossible question now, but why do you think Japanese bands never make it past Japan, really? The majority of them, you never hear of them, in the West.
I think for this, it's funny because there's still this like idea that foreign artists are huge in Japan, or like British artists are huge outside of, like in other parts of the world. And it is true, like some of the big pop stars are, but I guess I would say Japanese artists and Asian artists are not as popular and huge and successful in Europe and America as they are there, because they're not here either. Like Japanese, the most popular artists are Japanese and Korean and, Asian. Like that's what they're listening to. So I think that it's sort of an illusion that the foreign artists are so huge here. It's more of a PR that, like, if you're a UK band, it's really interesting to tell your UK and American fans that you're huge in Japan. That's a good story. Like,
yeah,
and you can take these like videos of the like wild, crazy Beatlemania that happens there. And it makes it seem like you're the biggest thing in Japan, but they're really not. So that's your little industry secret there that, you know, I definitely think there's a language barrier, obviously, like, and I think that there's a cultural difference that just doesn't work. But I mean, I don't know if that's true anymore, because the biggest band in the world at the moment, I think, is still BTS, and culturally, there's not much in common, but there's something going on there. Baby metal was able to break down that barrier, and baby metal charted pretty high in America and UK and Europe, did all the big festivals. So yeah, I don't know. But I think it's really that Americans like American artists, or artists that sing in English, and European artists like artists in their own country. They're closer to home is where artists tend to do the best.
True, actually.
I asked some major Japanese bands. I've worked with some major Japanese bands and for their management companies. And I've asked them, like, what are your biggest markets? And they say by far Japan. Next is Southeast Asia, like Singapore, Taiwan, Malaysia, Indonesia. Those Japanese artists do huge in those countries. Korea, they do pretty well. And then Europe, and then America, which is really interesting to me. You know, you would think America might be a little bit bigger than those, but no, it's the lower on the totem pole.
Yeah.
There.
It's interesting, the whole flip around of it, you know. It's not what you'd expect at all. Very interesting. I'd love to actually dig a bit deeper into it and find out a bit more. It's something that would really interest me now. But we'll get on to Band Builder Academy. And I have a scenario for you.
Okay.
Say I'm a new band, been out 2-3 years. We have a decent sized following. We can make all our own music at home. But how do we make a decent living at being a musician? How do we get to that next step to make a decent living?
Okay. Yeah. So that artist, by the way, if you're that artist, or let's say you're even not, you have a moderate to small following, those are the artists that I love working with now. And that's what I've been doing for the last 5 years. But I think the answer there is traffic and conversions, and getting the right type of traffic, not casting a wide net, trying to go for millions of people and then getting them to check you out. Going to the areas that the artists that you want to like tour with, the artists that you're looking to like become. Look at how where their fans are. Try to find out where their fans consume music, read about the band, or try to learn their team, even like who's their publicist, and who's their booking agent, who's their manager, and look at who they work with, and try to look at the network of where you fit in, and build your team in the image of the bands that you want to be like, the bands you want to be like, or the bands you want to be on tour with. It's just, each genre has its own like little communities, and not just communities of fans, but communities of industry people that support those artists. So that's a shortcut for you. But there's lots of steps along the way. The revenue is going to come not necessarily from streaming, but from your touring. Once touring comes back fully, from your merchandise and your VIP packages, which, going back to Japan really quick, something really interesting I learned about Japan that I had no idea. And Japanese artists have been hit harder during the pandemic because of this. They were relying on the revenue from signings, CD signings, like the big J-pop bands.
Yeah.
They charge $150 for their concert, but then they charge $20 for an autograph, or $25 for an autograph, and $25 for the CD. So it's like $50 to buy the CD and get an autograph. So they're making huge revenue at these autograph signings at the venues. That was where a lot of their profit was going. Music sales were going through the record label publisher, then back to them. But the big money was from the concert revenue and the autograph signings. And I heard in China, because they don't have a good music economy for streaming and downloads and record sales, they make their money from their appearances, but tipping. like tipping has become a big thing.
Oh,
So I think this, and their social media platforms have tipping built in, and ours are getting that way where there's lots of like buy me a coffee tipping type software built into a lot of platforms. I think that's going to be more of a thing. But for musicians, it's building your own fan base, winning those fans over, and getting the super fans into tickets, VIP packages, deluxe packaging and merchandise. And then I would take a page out of the playbook of what they're doing over here and do those, VIP meet and greets with signings. You probably can't command what the big J-pop stars can, but there's a good market there. And then, also, just the tipping thing. If you can somehow take advantage of that, that's a good way to do it. And then, build a team, because there's lots of money to be made from music licensing and sync for movie, television, video games, and all those type of licensing. But it's also different by genre. There's lots of different, people say there's like cheat codes for each genre, and you need to learn where the money's being made in whatever genre of music you're making. So, and if you're not a touring artist, then you've got to get good at licensing and, sync and production music, maybe those type of things.
Yeah. I often think to myself, the Beatles, the way they stopped touring completely and just were in the studio all the time. No way would they be the richest musicians on the earth nowadays if they'd done that,
That's true. That's very true.
Yeah. And do bands nowadays, can they make it without a label at all, or at some stage do they need to get onto a label?
No, I think you can make it without a label, and there's powerful management agencies that have their own like in-house labels, or not label, but it's you own the master, and you're your own record label with your team. And because you can do distribution pretty easily, your distribution can compete with majors. But yeah, there's tons of artists doing it. I mean, independents by percentage are 30% of the overall pie. Major labels are the other 70% maybe. But of the 30%, probably 10% of those are totally on small DIY, or not, sorry, unsigned, not to a label. The other 20% of the revenue are independent labels, like smaller labels, not major labels. Maybe it's 15%. I don't know. But there's a good 10 to 15% of people that don't have a record label at all that are making up 15% of the revenue in the music business. That's pretty significant. And that number has been going up over the last 20 years or, 15 years. So yes, you can do it. A team helps. It's a who business. It's a relationship business. So those relationships make things happen a lot better. But there's plenty of artists, whether they're, performing artists or in the bedroom artists, doing really good business all on their own without a record label. And those artists should definitely join Band Builder, because my thing is teaching self-releasing independent artists to release their music in a way that's competitive with major labels. And that's where I come from with big independent label, major labels. And, that's the plans that I lay out are competitive with those plans. So I would encourage anybody to say, yes, I can do it. Now, record labels do have value still. And I would say the value is their promotional pipelines. Now, a lot of things are driven by TikTok and Instagram and social media and YouTube these days. And you don't really need a record label to do that. But there is something to be said for having a global team that can plug you into like the radio pipelines. Radio is still powerful. That can talk to the Apples and the Spotifys and the Amazons and the Googles of the world, and get in there and leverage and have those relationships. They also have the relationships at TikTok and at Spotify, at Facebook and Instagram and all, Twitter. They have those relationships. They have commercial partners for brands. They have sync relationships. So there are these promotional pipelines and business pipelines that major labels do offer. And I think, to use Adele for an example, she was on XL Recordings, an independent label in the UK, for the beginning of her career, the first album and part of the second album, and then she XL licensed the record to RCA, a major label, after that. And the main reason to do that was that global infrastructure. When you're the biggest artist in the world, you kind of need that global infrastructure to get those 2,500 people getting on the phone and getting everything to number one around the world and not leave any money on the table.
Yeah. And first of all, I have to say, it's called Band Builder, but I take it you don't have to just be a band. You can be solo and any genre as well, is it?
Yeah. That's purely. I named it that because I came from the band world. I came from working with rock bands, so I didn't really imagine that hip hop artists and singer songwriters, solo artists, production music people making music for TV and video games and advertisements. I never thought those people would be coming to Band Builder, but it turns out 50% of my members are actually either solo artists or non-performing artists, or just in different genres than the bands. Are more like groups or singers or rappers or producers. And then I have a lot of record labels and artist managers in the academy as well.
Yeah. And when they sign up, they get access to a range of courses, everything they need to know to grow their band. I take it they get full access to your expertise as well.
They do. Yeah. So it's 70, 80, 90 hours of video learning, video courses. And it's not just like one course. There's a bunch. So it takes you a while to go through it. That's why it's like an academy, not like a standalone course. And you get access for the monthly price. You get access to all the courses at once, and you can consume them at your own pace. So you can consume the lessons, and there's a roadmap that teaches you how to go through it in chronological order, from just getting started and building a foundation in your branding, all the way through your release planning and strategy, building, social media and learning advertising and learning promotion and all of that stuff, and then releasing a record. So that's all just self-consumed. There's video training and courses on like little one-off topics like music licensing or putting out cover songs, releasing cover songs, because I have that expertise putting out all those Punk Goes cover songs. And then you do have access to me. The memberships right now, at the time you're watching this or recording this, every membership gets a free 30-minute phone consultation with me. And if you're nice to me, I'll extend that beyond 30 minutes for you. But the artist, each artist gets my time on the phone initially. And then I'm in the community answering questions all day long. And I give really long, like blog style, multi-paragraph answers and responses. And I'm doing a lot of the training from the questions that I get from my members in the community. And I'm very responsive. So yeah, I'm in there. That's all I do. I'm in there all day chatting up people in the community. And yeah, so, and then you get lots of tools in the academy. So I help you. There's a lot of like bad actors out on Google that are trying to sell the latest playlist promotion service or the latest PR or the latest tricks in the music industry and the hacks. And it's hard to tell if they're a scam or not. So I have a document when you get in that you can see, like, here's what you should be doing. Stay away from this stuff. Here's services that you should stay away from. These are the ones that are sort of good and qualified and I approve. So it helps you weed that out. That's something everybody likes. And then there's just tons of tools. Like I built tools for the academy. I built this Spotify algorithm tool that pretty much lets you know where your internal chart position is within the Spotify algorithm. And you can see it for any artist. So you could go look at your favorite artists or artists that you want to go on tour with and study how they're working in the algorithm, what playlists they're getting on. And my algorithm tool helps you uncover those playlists and sort of follow the path upward in the algorithm. And more importantly, stay away from the wrong types of playlists and fans that are going to skip your music. Because that's one thing you'll learn is how to nurture the algorithm and how to keep away from bad algorithm actions. And I'm probably getting a little bit too boring and deep here, but
No.
those are some things people really love about my academy. The fact that they have access to me for questions, they get really in-depth, long answers. They have these tools that nobody else has. They have analytics that, there's all sorts of cool things in there that they get free.
That's something very interesting, actually. You said bad playlists. I assumed there was no such thing as a bad playlist because, artists nowadays, all they're getting told is get your music on a playlist, get your music on a playlist. That's what you need to do. But is there actually bad playlists out there, that you shouldn't be on?
If you're an artist, I would say there's probably 30 to 300 that small playlists that you need to be on or you want to be on that aren't going to get your music skipped. Right. And I'm talking like playlists that have between 100 followers and 1 million followers. Like there's probably only 30 to 300 in your genre that you want to be on. Then there's like user playlists that you and I make in our bedroom that have our favorite songs. Those are good, but I'm not talking about those. Talking about the ones that have a lot of followers. All the other ones are just going to get you skips. Right. And you might buy onto some generic playlist that gets you 100,000 streams. And you're like, oh my God, I paid $1,000 and I got 100,000 streams. I'm big now. But what you don't realize is you might've got 100,000 streams, but you got 90,000 skips. And when you get 90,000 skips, it tells Spotify and the algorithm that people hate your music. The Spotify stops the algorithm. They stop showing your music to people, and you've completely killed the organic algorithm. And there's no chance for you to, after 6 months go by, 9 months, maybe a year go by, you can clean up your algorithm and recover, but you're really setting yourself back. So get in Band Builder Academy, learn how to do the right things, and don't wing it. Don't mess around with your music career. You've spent a lot of money, a lot of time making your songs, paying the producers and writers, and you've made music videos and content. You've spent all this time. Don't screw it up by just doing bad promotion.
Yeah, some great advice there. And we actually have a special offer for the listeners.
Yeah, you can join. Brian will leave a link in the show notes here with the link. Click that link, and it's also going to give you a 10% coupon. I think the word concerts, that's what we're doing, concerts. So just use the code concerts when you sign up, and you'll get 10% off your lifetime of your membership every month you're a member, or if you do the lifetime membership annual membership, you get 10% off of that as well.
Brilliant. And thanks a million for putting that together.
Yeah, no problem. Hope to see some of you guys in there. And yeah,
I'm sure there's going to be a lot of listeners that'll be very interested anyway. I know a lot are musicians themselves, so it'll definitely pique their interest. We might as well get to the last couple of questions. I know it's getting late in Japan.
That's all right. I've been looking forward to it.
I normally ask everybody this, and you can't get off the podcast until you answer, I'm afraid. So if there was any performer or artist from history you could see for one night only in concert, who would it be?
What was I going to say? I thought about this. Led Zeppelin.
Right.
Because I never got to see them play. Not old enough. And just, man, you can hear how amazing they would be live on those recordings. You could hear how insane it would be. So yes, Led Zeppelin, 100%. I don't even think there's a second close. Second one close to that.
Yeah. I love how back in the days when they would have been recording that, as you said, it sounds like they're live. They were trying to emulate the live sound, and they did it perfectly. Yeah.
No, that analog sound, the live studio recordings, not much studio magic. They could cut and splice some things here, punch in vocals here and there, but for the most part, you're hearing a lot of live takes.
Yeah.
All live takes.
Yeah. I'd say it's probably a mix between them and the Beatles are who I hear most on all the episodes.
I'm curious. Oh, so Led Zeppelin's kind of a common one. Does it come up a lot?
It would be. Yeah.
That just says everything. Yeah, I'm in the right zone there. It would have blown my mind.
Yeah, definitely. And if you had to spend 24 hours locked in a room with any artist or performer from history, who would it be?
Uh, um, yeah, I mean, I've spent a lot of time with musicians and big musicians that I really look up to and all that. And um, sometimes they blow you away, sometimes they disappoint. But I think Bruce Springsteen, I think he wouldn't disappoint. I think if I had to spend a whole day with him, I'd just be a fanboy hanging out with him and just shadow him for a day. That would be my dream. That would be amazing. I don't know if I could talk to him. I don't know if I could get any words out, but yeah, I would love to just hang out with him for a day. That'd be amazing.
Yeah. That's actually a really good pick. He's one of them people that, even though like he's a superstar, he seems really down to earth and just like a really nice, cool guy.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Now, does he come up a lot? Has he come up a lot?
I I want to say he's come up maybe 2 or 3 times.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not so unique. Oh well.
Ah, we'll see what your next answer is. If there was a song that could appear on the soundtrack to your life, what would it be?
Ooh, tough, man. I have to answer this one.
I'm afraid so.
Yeah. Okay. So one song that's like kind of like it's like my song.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. I'm turning Japanese by the Vapors. I don't know.
That's actually a good one.
No. But seriously, because actually I don't really like that song. But um, geez, maybe could I pick a few albums? Basically,
Yep.
the entire Fugazi discography, like that is like the soundtrack to my life. Probably. I mean, the things they're singing about on those records, and if you haven't checked them out, check it out. It's probably not going to be, it's an acquired taste, like, but the things they're singing about there are so important, and I could say they've shaped my life, and probably led to where I am today. Like I said, getting into the music business because they had a record label, but it's really the things they're saying on their records. And they were making their records in the 80s and 90s, but the things they're singing about are super relevant to today, like the things that are going on in the world today. Like, so that their lyrics they're timeless, and they were really prudent back then. And it tells, as humans, we're not learning our lessons. We're not making the right decisions because they were singing about this stuff so long ago, and it's a shame. But um, they're a punk band, so you check them out if you like punk music. Um, and I don't know. I think that probably, if I could just pick some albums, I said all the Fugazi albums. I can't really pick one song.
Yeah. Sounds like they sum you up pretty well then.
Yeah, I think so. And if I could figure out what all the lyrics and they're saying to that band Eastern Youth in Japan, I would too. I haven't transcribed them yet, but if I have some interesting stuff to say.
And the final one, is there something I should have asked you?
Something you should ask me, huh? I don't know. Yeah, probably. I'm sorry. No, I don't. I think we covered a lot. Like, yeah, we talked about influences, and we talked about like the concerts and stuff. No, I think we're good.
Perfect. All done. So listen, I've really enjoyed chatting to you now for the last hour and a half. I was really looking forward to this one and it didn't disappoint. It was super interesting. Aside from the listeners, I really enjoyed it. So I know
Oh,
they're going
good.
to love it.
Glad to hear it. I hope I didn't get too long-winded or boring on anything, but
No,
uh,
not at all.
no, I was excited about this. Thanks so much for having me on.
Hey guys, I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please rate and review us on iTunes and Spotify. And if you're interested in signing up to Band Builder Academy, use the link in the show notes below and enter the code CONCERTS and you'll receive 10% off. So, until next time, keep rocking. Hey, what are you guys still doing here? The show is over. It's over. You can go home. Go on. We'll see you next time. We'll be here.
Bye.